Third important component in monitoring and evaluation is the indicator matrix. And this is a very critical tool for planning and managing data collection, analysis, and its use. It basically expands the log frame to identify key information requirements for each indicator and summarizes the key monitoring and evaluation tasks for the project. Now, while the names and the formats of the indicator matrix may vary, for example, monitoring and evaluation plan, indicator planning matrix, or data collection plan, the overall function remains the same. And usually the project donors have a certain standard required format. For example, USAID has its own standard required format, which you will adopt while if you are applying for their project. So if I tell you about the indicators, they basically provide some clear statements of the precise information needed to assess whether the proposed changes have occurred or not. Okay. It can be either quantitative or qualitative, and typically the indicators in an indicator matrix are taken directly from the log frame. Right, so let me show you an example that how can you make the indicator matrix, and I'll discuss whatever goes on that matrix in further detail. Okay. Now here is an example of indicator matrix. As you can see, the first is the indicator. So I've already explained this slide that what do we mean by indicators, and if you look at the example outcome is the percent of children younger than 1 year old who are fully immunized for polio immunization coverage. So it's basically the same example that we are carrying forward. Excuse me. So what is the definition of this indicator? So when we say indicator definition, we mean that each indicator needs a detailed definition of its key terms, including an explanation of specific aspects that will be measured, such as who, what, and where the indicator will be applied. Now, the definition should also explain precisely how the indicator will be calculated, such as the numerator or the denominator of a percent measure. Okay, so this kind of information should be provided. So if you look at the example, so children refer to age between 3 days and 1 year. So it's very specific indicator. Fully immunized for polio refers to getting polio immunization vaccine according to the MOH standards. Second dose, the time period, the months are already there. So these are the indicators through which we will achieve this outcome. Now the methods or sources. Now this column will identify sources of information and data collection methods or tools, such as use of secondary data, regular monitoring or periodic evaluations, baseline or endline surveys, or any other focus group discussions. This column should also indicate whether data collection tools are pre-existing and will need to be developed. Are they pre-existing or need to be developed? So are you using the already used data tools, or you need to develop a special data tool for collection of the data? Okay. The next is the frequency schedule. This one. Now in this column, you would need to specify how often the data for each indicator will be collected. For example, you can say that monthly, quarterly, or annually. And it is often useful to list the data collection timing or schedule, such as startup and end dates for collection, or deadlines for tool development. Now, when planning for data collection timings, you need to consider two factors such as the seasonal variations, the school schedules, the holidays, and religious observations, etc. So if you are, suppose, collecting the data in a Muslim country, you would need to keep in mind that there may be the month of Ramadan, for example. So it's the whole month people fast. So it will be difficult for you to collect the data. So these information are also relevant, and you need to keep them in mind as well. Now, the persons responsible, as you can see it here, persons responsible, I think I skipped that column. Now this column will list the people responsible for the data collection and analysis. So whatever the people are going to be involved, that can be the community volunteers, the field staff, the project managers, or if you have any other local partners and external consultants. So you need to mention them here. Now, in addition to specific people's names, use their position title to ensure clarity in case of personnel changes. Now, this column is useful in assessing and planning for capacity building for the monitoring and evaluation system. Okay. Now, the next one is the data analysis. And in this column, you would need to describe the process for compiling and analyzing the data to gauge whether the indicator has been met or not. Okay. For example, survey data usually require statistical analysis, while qualitative data may be reviewed by research staff or community members. So as you can see here in this example, project management team during project reflection meeting. So it will be assessed during the project management project reflection meetings. Okay, so this is the technique for analysis. And the last one is the information use. And in this column, you will identify the intended audience and use of the information. So here, as you can see, that this information will be shared with the community, monitoring process of project with management of Sri Lankan Red Cross Society, tsunami recovery program management, impact evaluation, justify intervention to Ministry of Health. So these are basically the stakeholders that you are going to share this information with. Now the findings could be used for monitoring project implementation, evaluation, evaluating the intervention, planning future work, and reporting to policymakers or donors. Now the indicator matrix can be adapted to information requirements for project management. For example, you can add separate columns to identify data sources, collection data and tools, information use and audience or person responsible for data collection and analysis. It may also be preferable to use separate matrices for monitoring and evaluation matrices. However, it is critical that the indicator matrix be developed with the participation of those who will be using it. And completing the matrix requires detailed knowledge of the project and context provided by the local project team and partners. Their involvement is key, and they will contribute to data quality because it reinforces their understanding of what data they are to collect and how they will collect them. Alright? Now, we have the fourth and last component of monitoring and evaluation, which is the data collection and analysis plan. Now, here it expands on the information provided in the indicator matrix, and you actually describing in detail how data and information will be defined, collected, organized, and analyzed. And typically, this plan consists of a detailed narrative that explains how each type of data will be collected, along with all the steps needed to ensure quality data and sound research practices. Now, key components of this plan usually include the unit of analysis, the link between the indicators, variables of questionnaires, the sampling frame and methodology, timing and mode of data collection, and research staff responsibilities, enumerator selection, training and supervision, fieldwork timing and logistics, checks for data quality, data entry and storage, hypothesized relationships among the variables, and data analysis methods. Now, it is important to provide the rationale for the data collection and analysis methods. Now, this includes the triangulation of methods. For example, as I said earlier, that you can use a mix of both the quantitative and qualitative and sources to reduce bias and ensure that data that you have collected is reliable and complete. It should also be informed by the standards that guide good practice of project evaluation. So there are many useful resources in the evaluation community that identify key principles to ensure ethical, accountable, and qualitative evaluation. So some of the examples are American Evaluation Association, Australian Evaluation Society, and Development Assessment Committee, DAC 2008. The plan should also discuss the purpose of the data collection and analysis in terms of specific monitoring and evaluation functions. So some key functions of monitoring include compliance, process, results, context, who are the beneficiaries, and the organizational monitoring. And typically a project use a combination of these monitoring functions and design data collection and analysis accordingly. So for project assessment, the discussion should identify not only the methods used, but the timing of the assessment of event, that is, for example, baseline studies, annual reviews, midterm and final evaluation, and the rationale for selecting evaluation with specific skill sets and independence, that is, internal versus external evaluators. So why are you using? So you need to rationalize that as well. Now, when we come back to the next video, I am going to upload a reading document, and I ask you to read the whole document in detail, where there are some major sources of data and information for project monitoring and evaluation, and under each source there is some explanation. So for example, I say that secondary data, so there is an explanation of the secondary data. If I say sample surveys, so what do I mean by sample surveys? So it's a 2-page document that I want you to read and understand, and I want you to keep it with you so that it may be helpful for you if you want to adopt any of these methods in your evaluation for the projects. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.